Welcome to Pharma Stability Series. If you want to understand stability studies in a simple, practical, and regulatory-focused way, you are in the right place. In this video, we will break down a key stability topic step by step, including its scientific basis, regulatory importance, and common industry expectations. So let's get started.
Have you ever wondered what really happens when the FDA shows up to inspect a drug's stability program? It's not as simple as just getting a pass or a fail. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain and find out what inspectors are truly looking for and how they use these studies as this incredible window into a company's entire quality culture. Let's dive in. All right, so here's our game plan. First, we're going to bust a big myth about what these inspections are even for. Then, we'll get into the bedrock of what makes a program solid. From there, we'll see how inspectors can actually read the story hidden inside the data, how a company's true character shines through in a crisis, and finally, what it all boils down to, proving you are in complete and total control.
Okay, let's kick things off with a pretty big idea, one that might just flip how you think about these inspections for good.
So let's ask this question. Is an FDA stability inspection just a final exam? Where passing is all that matters? You do the work for years, get the right answers on the sheet, and boom, you get an A? Well, as it turns out, the reality is a whole lot deeper and way more demanding than that.
See, a lot of people assume an inspector just glances at a data sheet, looks for the word pass, and moves on. But the truth? What they're actually seeing is a direct window into your entire company. Your stability study tells them everything. If your science is sound, if your teams are disciplined, and really, if you can be trusted to keep a drug safe for its whole shelf life. And clearing that bar, well, that is a much, much tougher challenge.
So how do you meet that higher standard? Well, it all starts way before an inspector even sets foot in your building. A great inspection isn't about acing the final test. It's about the rock-solid foundation you built months or even years beforehand. The inspector's first stop is almost always the stability protocol. This is basically the blueprint for the whole study, and right away they're asking some tough questions. Do these storage conditions make scientific sense for this drug? Is the pull schedule logical? And maybe most importantly, does this protocol feel like it was custom built for this specific product, or is it just some generic copy and paste template? They can tell the difference.
And that line of thinking leads them to one of the most critical questions of the entire inspection. The actual batches of the drug you picked for this long-term study, are they really representative of the millions of doses that you're going to sell to actual patients?
Because let me tell you, a weak or evasive answer here is a huge red flag. Think about an answer like, well, these were just the batches we had at the pilot plant back then. Oof, that's a weak answer. To an inspector, it suggests you might be building your entire shelf life claim on shaky ground, or even worse, on cherry-picked data. And that is a seed of doubt you really can't afford to plant.
Okay, so let's say you've got a solid protocol, and your batches are perfectly representative. Great start. But just gathering the data? That's not even close to being enough. The next big test, the one that never stops, is what you do with that data over time.
And this is where you see a huge split in mindset. A reactive company. They're just logging numbers. They're passive. An inspector could literally walk in, plot 2 years of data themselves, and be the first person to ask, so, can anyone tell me why this impurity has been slowly creeping up towards its limit for the last 18 months? That is an absolutely devastating question to get hit with. But a proactive company, they're already on it. They're actively trending their data. They saw that drift months ago, and they've already started an investigation. That shows they aren't just collecting numbers, they're managing their product.
And all of this brings us to something that supports literally everything else we've talked about. Think of it like the main support beam for the whole building. Data integrity isn't just another box to check. It is a load-bearing issue. And if it fails, the whole thing can come crashing down in an instant.
So listen closely here, because these are the kinds of things that can turn a simple review into a very, very serious problem. Missing records, entries that are backdated, sloppy math. These might seem like small mistakes, but to an inspector, they absolutely shatter trust. They point to a weak quality culture and can make them question the credibility of all your data, not just the stability program.
Okay, so what happens when things, go wrong? Because in science, they sometimes do. The way a company deals with an unexpected result is one of the most revealing tests of its entire system.
And that brings us to a really important term, OS, which stands for out of specification. This is when a test result officially fails, It's like a big, flashing red light that signals a potential problem with the product. And what a company does in that moment, well, that's everything.
A company that has its act together follows a clear, methodical process. They don't panic. They carefully document the result, they launch a real scientific investigation to find the true root cause, and then they rigorously assess what that finding means for the product that might already be out there with patients. And this comparison says it all, really. Any attempt to just explain the problem away, immediately blaming a lab tech without any proof, that just tanks your credibility. What builds it is a genuine, unbiased investigation that follows the science, no matter where it leads. That's what proves your system actually works when it's under pressure.
And that proof that your system actually works is what this all leads to. The protocol, the data, the crisis response, it's all funneling toward one final critical judgment that the inspector has to make.
At the end of the day, all this work is done to justify the drug's shelf life. And an inspector gets a sense very quickly if that expiration date is based on solid, scientific logic that comes straight from the data, or if it feels more like a commercial wish. A number that looks great for the sales team but is built on thin evidence. And believe me, they will always challenge optimism that isn't backed up by cold, hard facts.
And that brings us right to the heart of this entire explainer. The inspection is never just about the data points on a page. It's about a much bigger question. Can your company prove that it is actually, fundamentally, in control of its product, its processes, and its quality system?
So the next time you think about a stability study, try not to ask, did our product pass? The real question, the one the FDA is really asking, is so much deeper. It's, does our system deserve to?
If this helped, like and subscribe.